Hello everybody, welcome into another lesson. So today we are going to talk about how to find the volume of cubes, prisms, and cylinders. Here we have our very first object, which is a cube. As I mentioned yesterday, a cube is the 3D equivalent to a square. So a cube, all sides of a cube, all sides and edges have the exact same length. So to find the volume of a cube, it's just a side times a side times a side, or in other words, you just take one side, set it to the third power. So let's do some practical examples here. Let's say our cube has a side being 5 centimeters. We want to find the volume of that cube. We'll just take that side of 5 centimeters to the third power. Well, 5 to the third power, that's 125, and centimeters to the third power, you would get centimeters to the third, or you could call it cubic centimeters, or centimeters cubed. And your volume is 125 cubic centimeters. That's exactly what you would get. You find the volume because you want to know how much space the object will fill. That's what the idea of the volume is. So if you're trying to fill a pool or something, you want to know how much volume of water that pool will fill, or how much cement you need to put down in an area to build a road or something. That's going to be based on volume. Alright. Let's say we have a side of the cube that's 3 feet. Well, to find the volume, you'll just take that 3 feet, raise that to the third power. Well, 3 to the third power, that is going to be 27. Feet to the third power will give you cubic feet, or feet cubed, however you want to say it. So the volume of this cube is 27 cubic feet. And then, let's see, one more example for a cube. Let's say we have 2 inches. So let's see, a side of the cube is 2 inches. Well, to find the volume, you'll take that side of the cube being 2 inches. You'll set that to the third power. Well, 2 to the third, that's 8. Inches to the third is just that. You would get cubic inches, or inches cubed. That would be your volume, would be 8 cubic inches. So cubes are pretty simple enough, honestly. You just take a side and set it to the third power and you'll get your answer. That's pretty easy. Now let's get into some prisms here. We're going to do a rectangular prism and a triangular prism, then we'll go on to cylinders. So let's see, let's do a rectangular prism. Of course, let me draw said prism. Just got to draw the prism here. Alright, we drew our rectangular prism. So, of course, in the prism we have, in a prism rectangular, your bases are rectangles. You're going to take the length of one side, the length of one of the rectangles, and the width of one of the rectangles. And then you have the height. You have the height dimension. So to find the volume of a prism, it's capital B, which is the area of the base times the height. In any prism or cylinder, it's always the area of the base times the height. Well, for a rectangular prism, the area of the base, the rectangle, is the length times the width. So you'll take the length times the width, and then you'll just multiply that by the height. So the volume of a rectangular prism ends up being length times width times height. So let's throw in some real examples here. Let's say we'll do 10 inches, we'll do 5 inches so 10 inches for the length, 5 inches for the width, 7 inches for the height. Okay, so we have a prism that has 10 inches for the length, 5 inches for the width, and 7 inches for the height. We want to find the volume of that. So to find the volume, you'll take your length of 10 inches, multiply that by your width of 5 inches, and then multiply that by your height of 7 inches. Well, when we do the multiplication here, 10 times 5 is 50, times 7, that's 350. Inches times inches times inches, that's inches to the third power, cubic inches, or inches cubed. So the volume of this rectangular prism is 350 cubic inches. That's what you would get when you multiply the length and the width and the height. Do a couple more examples here. I want to do 3 examples of each. Next prism we'll do is a triangular prism. Alright, so let's say we have, we have a length of 3 meters for the rectangular prisms, 3 meters, the height would be 1 meter, the width would be 1 meter, the height would be 2 meters. So the length of the prism is 3 meters, width is 1 meter, height is 2 meters. To find the volume, you'll take your length of 3 meters times your width of 1 meter times your height of 2 meters. Well, doing the multiplication, 3 times 1 is 3 times 2 is 6. Meters times meters times meters, that's going to be cubic meters. So the volume of this rectangular prism is going to be 6 cubic meters. That's what you would get, is 6 cubic meters. Let's do one more example with the rectangular prism. One more example with that. Let's see here. I got 25 centimeters for the length of the prism, 10 centimeters for the width, and about 15 centimeters for the height. So in order to find the volume of that prism, the rectangular prism, I'm going to take the length of 25 centimeters times the width of 10 centimeters times the height of 15 centimeters. Okay, now I just got to do some multiplication. See, so when we do the multiplication, see, 3,750 cubic centimeters is what you would get when you do all the multiplication. So the volume of this prism is 3,750 cubic centimeters. That's exactly what you would get. So rectangular prisms are also pretty easy. You just got to take the length times the width times the height. Alright, let's get into a triangular prism. Let's get into that. A triangular prism. Alright, let's draw our wonderful prism here. Alright, so we got our triangular prism here. So both bases of the prism are indeed triangles. So again, the overall volume formula is the same. It's the area of the base, capital B, times your height. However, the base is a triangle. We're dealing with something a little bit different here. If we remember, the area of the base of a triangle is half the base times the height. Well, we're going to end up having two heights here. Of course, you have your base for the triangle. You need to have a height for, we'll call that height 1 for your triangle. The first height's going to be for inside of the triangle, the base of the triangle. Then you're going to have a second height, which will be the height of the prism. So overall, the volume formula for a triangular prism is half the base times the first height, which is just simply the height of the triangle itself, times the second height, which is the height of the prism. So let's say, let's do some examples here. So we got, we'll say 6 yards for the base. Height 1 would be 9 yards. Height 2 would be 12 yards. Alright, so to find the volume of this triangular prism, we're going to take 1/2 times the length of the base, which is 6 yards, times the first height, which is the height of the triangle itself, which would be 9 yards, times the height of the prism, which was 12 yards. Well, let's do some basic multiplication here first. Let's do 1/2 times 6. That'd be 3 yards. We'll have 3 yards times 9 yards times 12 yards. Now all we got to do is the multiplication, and we'll get our volume. Had to clear some things. Okay. So 3 times 9 times 12, that's 324. Then yards times yards times yards, that's cubic yards or yards cubed, however you prefer to say that. So the volume of this triangular prism is going to be 324 cubic yards. And I'll do 2 more examples with the triangular prism here. Alright. Let's say we got 10 feet for the length of the base. The height, we'll also call that 10 feet. The height of the triangle itself is 10 feet. the height of the prism would be 15 feet. So we want to find the volume of a triangular prism with the length of the base being 10 feet, the height of the triangle base being 10 feet, and then the height of the prism being 15 feet. So let's go ahead and take that volume. It'd be 1/2 times the length of that base of 10 feet times the height of the triangle, 10 feet, times the height of the prism being 15 feet. Alright, well, let's do the 1/2 times 10. That would give you 5 feet times 10 feet times 15 feet. Now we just got to do the multiplication, so you'd have 50 times 15, which should end up being 750. 50 times 15, yeah, that should be 750, I would think. Yep, it is. So 750 feet times feet times feet, that's cubic feet or feet cubed, however you prefer to say it. But the volume of this triangular prism is going to be 750 cubic feet. That's exactly what you would get. Let's do one more example with the triangular prism, then we'll go on to a cylinder. Alright. Say we got 9 inches for the base, 7 inches for the height of the triangle, then we got 13 inches for the height of the prism. So we're going to find the volume of this prism. It's going to be 1/2 times the length of that base, being 9 inches, times the height of the triangle being 7 inches, times the height of the prism being 13 inches. Well, we know half of 9, that's 4.5. So we'll have 4.5 inches times 7 inches times 13 inches. Let's go ahead and do all that multiplication here. So 4.5 times 7 times 13. Get 409.5. So that gives you 409.5 inches times inches times inches is cubic inches. So the volume of this triangular prism is going to be 409.5 cubic inches. That's exactly what you would get. So for the triangular prism, it's overall still the area of the base times the height. Well, the area of the base is going to be half of the base times the height of the triangle, and then you just multiply it by the height of the prism. That's how you get the volume. That's how you have two different heights. Know which one's which, but these aren't too bad either. We're going to move on to, actually it's surprisingly easy to deal with cylinders. Those are surprisingly easy to deal with. Alright, let's deal with cylinders now. A cylinder. So, cylinder is a 3D object, 3D figure that has both bases that are circles. So it's like a prism in a way, only both bases are circles. So what you have here then is still, to find the volume, you find the area of a base, find the area of the base times the height of the prism. Well, you have, of course, your base is a circle. You have your radius r. To find the area of the base of one of these, it doesn't matter which base you pick. The base of a circle, of course, is pi r squared. That's the area of the base is pi r squared because the base is a circle. Then you just take the area, multiply it by the height. So the volume of a cylinder is pi r squared times h. Of course, you have your height right here. Then you have your radius of the base being a circle. So let's go ahead, let's do a few examples here of a cylinder. Let's say the radius is 5 centimeters. The height is going to be 15 centimeters. So we will take, to find the volume of this prism, we're going to take pi times that radius of 5 centimeters for the base of the circle squared. We'll take that times the height of 15 centimeters of the cylinder. So we'll still have pi on the outside, but the 5 squared, that's going to be 25 centimeters to the second power. That's just square centimeters. Then you'll have that times 15 centimeters. Now, before I bring pi into this and do the multiplication, I'd like to simplify this further. Do 25 times 15, which would be 375. Centimeters squared times centimeters, that's going to be centimeters cubed. So now we just got to do pi times 375 cubic centimeters. We're going to round the result to approximately 2 decimal places. So let's see, pi times 375, 1178.1. So it comes out to 1,178.1 cubic centimeters. So the volume of this cylinder is about 1,178.1 cubic centimeters. That's exactly what you would get. And we'll do 2 more examples here with the cylinder. Alright, let's say the radius of this base being a circle is 10 inches. We'll do 10 inches. We'll say the height is 20 inches. So we want to find the volume of this cylinder. So what you're going to do is take pi times the radius of the base being 10 inches, set that equal to the second power. Then you'll take that times your height of 20 inches. Well, let's do the exponents first. You'll do pi times the, see that 10 to the second power, that's 100. Inches to the second power is just that, square inches. Times the 20 inches for the height of the cylinder. Well, let's simplify this before we bring pi into it. We'll leave pi on the outside, of course. Then we have 100 times 20. That would be 2,000. Inches squared times inches, that'd be cubic inches. So now you're left with pi times 2,000 cubic inches to get your volume. Let's round the result to approximately 2 decimal places. Let's do pi times 2,000 and we'll have our answer. Alright, 6,283.19. 6,283.19. 0.19 cubic inches. So the volume of this cylinder is approximately 6,283.19 cubic inches once we've done all the math. And I'll do one more example, of course. I like to do it in a series of 3. I think that's best to really help learning. Let's say the radius of this circle is going to be 3 meters, will be the radius of that circle for the base. The height would be 10 meters. Okay, so let's find the volume of this cylinder that has the radius of the base of the base being the circle of 3 meters and the height of the cylinder being 10 meters. So we'll do pi times the radius of the circle being 3 meters to the second power times the height being 10 meters. Okay, so we'll do the exponents first. So 3 to the second power, that's 9. Meters to the second power is square meters. So you have pi times 9 square meters times that height of 10 meters. Well, let's simplify this first before I bring pi into it. We'll leave pi on the outside still. 9 times 10 is 90. Meters squared times meters, that's cubic meters. So now we have pi times 90 cubic meters. Well, we'll round the result to about 2 decimal places. So it's pi times 90. You get 282.74. .74 cubic meters is what you would get for the volume of this cylinder. So whether it's a cylinder or a prism, your overall volume formula is the same. It's the area of the base times the height. Now, it's important to know what base you're dealing with because, again, it's the area of the base, but if you have a rectangular prism, the area of the base is length times width, and you just take that length times width and multiply it by height. If it's a triangular prism, you're going to take, of course, it's still the area of the base times the height, but the area of the base being a triangle is half the base times the height of that triangle. Then you'll take that, multiply it by the height of the prism. If it's a cylinder, of course, it's still the area of the base times the height, but the area of the base being a circle in a cylinder is pi r squared. You'll take that pi r squared, multiply it by the height. And of course, a cube, you just take one side to the third power, you'll have your volume. So that's it for this lesson. Next lesson, we are going to deal with the volume of pyramids, cones, and spheres. So hope everyone has a good day. Take care.